Hey guys, this is Travis in Technical Art 4, and today I'm going to do my first tutorial video on how to make magic trails in Unreal. Um, we're going to go all the way from the first parts of it, which is creating the actual trail texture, to implementing it into Unreal. So I guess let's get started. So go ahead and open up Photoshop. This is going to be sort of a Photoshop and Unreal tutorial. Those will be all the things you will need. We're going to go ahead and create new. I like to do 2K textures for all of my visual effects. You can go higher or lower as you see fit. We're just going to go ahead and call this T underscore magic beam. Cool, 2048 by 2048. Awesome. Create. Alright, cool. So you should have a black background now. I'm going to go ahead and create another layer on top of that background. And if you have a Wacom tablet, you can use that, or you can just use your mouse. I just use my mouse on most of these things, just because it's a lot easier for me. I don't have to break out the old Wacom tablet, but if you are more used to using that, feel free to plug that in now. But next up, I kind of break this beam up into 3 segments. One of them is going to be our super big low frequency stuff. Then next up we'll shrink down the size of the brush, and we'll do some sort of medium frequency things going on in here. And then lastly, we'll break it into some smaller stuff, some high frequency noise coming through here, just in random places as you see fit. Notice how I'm not going to the edge of the screen. We're going to move the texture. We're going to offset it a little bit the other way here in a second. So I don't want to go all the way to the other side. Let me buff this back up. Around 70 here. Close these off so it's not just out there. Cool. Make this thicker. Awesome. And then once you have sort of a base set up for high frequency, low frequency, and medium frequency stuff, what we're going to do is we're just going to grab that layer. We're going to go to Filter, Other, Offset. And then in the vertical, we're going to set it to 0. We don't need it to go in the vertical at all. And then in the horizontal, you'll want to put half of whatever value you used at the of the size of the image. Mine was 2048. So half of that is 1024. So now I will have a tile and texture here. So what I want to do is go ahead and go back up to, I think it was around 150, no, 120-ish. 130 looks pretty good, yeah. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you start naturally taking it to where it's supposed to end up and just connect these two in kind of unique ways. You can do some sort of fun stuff. You can bring stuff out to an end and then branch it off into another direction. Have two meet up in a certain way down here. You know, the world is your oyster when it comes to actually painting this texture. And don't worry about it looking super nice or having all of the correct features. We'll do some blurs at the end, so any sort of slip-ups that you have, Lord knows I have some of the shakiest hands here and I'm using my mouse, so you don't get a ton of the most perfect angles or sharp corners, but we will fix that up as we come into the end here. And then I will add again some high frequency stuff. And the brush I'm using, sorry, is just the hard round brush. I'm sizing at 30 for high frequency, 70 pixels for medium, and then around 130 for the low frequency stuff. I can even make these smaller. I'm gonna do a couple of these little ones. Come together and branch through. Yeah, you can do some cool stuff. Just think of this all in terms of energy coming across. That looks kind of fun. Cut through here. This one's kind of alone. Bump it up again. Give this guy a friend, you know, if you want to connect them all kind of together so you don't have too many just random branches hanging out. You want it to feel filled, but not too noisy, because once we start doing some of the blurs in here, it's going to start filling in pretty nicely. And then we'll start doing some weird off high frequency things to kind of push out the profile a little bit. And then we have a nice looking start for our texture. So then you'll notice if we do another offset, this is now a tiling texture all the way across. So if you think about a beam kind of coming across here, it'll slowly start to come together here. So I'm going to cancel that. So now for my the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw in a little bit of super high frequency stuff going on here. So let me see, I'm going to go down. Let's do Kyle's Splatter Brushes. I like these a lot. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and increase the size of this pretty large here. No, a little bit higher. Say around, yeah, that looks okay. What we're going to do is we're going to just sort of spread out some high frequency noise here in the middle, and then filter and just run the offset, the same function again. That one a little too low. This might be a bit too big. I'm going to lower this just a hair here. Cool, there we go. There's some nice noise in there. Awesome. So now we have a little bit of energy splatter kind of coming throughout. Then let's see. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a blur. So if I go to make sure my layer is selected, go to filter, go to blur and give it a Gaussian blur here, and then it pulls up this little window for you. You can add as much blur as you want. I'm going to keep mine kind of minimal right now just to get a little bit less hard edges in there, like some of the mistakes I have, less noticeable. Then let's see, probably going to go and let's go ahead and add maybe just, let's see, it kind of needs some background here, a little bit of noise going on behind it. So let's go ahead and add another layer, and we'll drop that layer underneath. Pull out the brush, go back to our brushes. We want the soft one this time. And I'm going to go ahead and tone that down a little bit. I don't want the opacity to be that high. So let's do about 49% and add just a little bit of background here, something going on behind it. Make sure not to go all the way to the edges once again, because when we go to do the tiling stuff, we're going to need to offset it and then add in that center. So now we got a nice core here coming through it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do a layers levels adjustment. And let's see, oh yeah, all those highs are way up. We need to do a little bit, let's try an auto layer on it. Auto contrast, is that what I'm looking for? Yeah, let's get that for now. And like it. Now let's start to mix it up a bit with, oh, that's right, I need to combine these two. Now that we got that looking good, let's go ahead and combine them. So merge layers, awesome. Now adjustments levels, and we should have more. Why am I not getting this right? Cancel. Oh, let's go ahead and skip that for now. We'll worry about it later so we can get some darker values in here. But what we need is the Smudge Tool. So the Smudge Tool is cool. What it does is it pushes the texture into any direction that we see fit, which leads to some super cool results here. So as you can see, I want it to sort of get thinned out a bit, and I also want to get sort of a wave in it. So I'm going to actually go, so the Smudge Tool is really cool for doing little movements like this to kind of push values in different directions and make some more strange shapes in here, make it feel a lot more energy, or a lot more like energy. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to get a really large size here, Not that high. There we go. And take the center, and I'm just going to pull that center up. See if it takes a minute here. Sorry, I'm moving a lot of pixels at one time, so now it might be better to use the Liquify tool here. I'm going to give it a second and then I'll be right back. Alright, I went ahead and canceled that, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to go ahead and click the layer, and we're going to go filter, and we're going to do Liquify. So what Liquify is going to do is it gives us this little menu here that allows us to do basically the same thing that the smudge is doing, but it is a dedicated platform for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push upwards a good chunk of the beam to make it have some cooler shape to it, and then I'm going to press OK. Let's see our result here. Okay, cool, we got a nice little push up there, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that layer once again. We're going to offset, so now you'll see it looks kind of weird without doing the same thing here in the center, and you're starting to see a little bit of that warping going on. So what we're going to do is do the same. We're going to go to the filter, Liquify, and then I'm going to shrink the size of this one. I don't want it to be quite as much, but I'm going to pull it down in these areas, kind of bring it all together here. Perfect. There we go, we get a nice bend in it. So now you're starting to see this hard edge show up just from my way too large a brush. Let's see if we can't fix that. Go ahead and go back to the smudge tool. Just sort of show, well, let me shrink the size of this thing. Alright, I'm going to pause one more time while it loads. Alright, let's see. Oh no, we still got nothing. Alright, I think we're recording again. Cool. So we are back. I'm going to go ahead and go back to that smudge tool. Well, let's go ahead and make sure this time that we decrease the size of that brush. Let's bring it down only like 200 pixels here. We can start pushing these around. You can see that we're getting rid of those hard edge lines. This little high frequency bit is pushing out just a bit too far. Let me go ahead, get that sticking back in. Push all this kind of inside a little bit more. The more you do this, the cooler kind of effects you get on the edge. You get some cool little shapes here. Depending on how much you want to move it, you can change the strength here. I like to keep mine around 38. If you do it pretty high up, it starts to get sort of shredded like this, and I'm not a big fan. I just like slowly shoving it across the texture. It makes for some more unique shapes and designs, especially when it comes to energy like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like when we shift it. Make sure we don't have hard edges here. Yeah, we do have a little bit. Let's go ahead and smooth those over. Push this up. Cool. Alright, so now I'm going to do just a bit of cleanup. I'm going to switch to black here, and I'm going to do just a little bit of darkening on the edges here, get rid of some of that noise that just got a little unruly. Calm it down just a hair. Cool. We're going to offset the time, make sure we look it over here. I'm not really a big fan of this little chunk. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Just have a little bit hanging off. Nice little parts. There we go. Cool. Alright, we got a nice looking trail here. So let's see it in action. I'll move this over to the side. You can see it slowly kind of move. We're going to be panning this texture across, but you can see it's going to have some more unique and interesting shapes here as it comes across. This one's going to be stretched out, but we got a nice looking energy here. Don't worry if your texture doesn't look like mine, and if your texture looks better than mine, awesome, good on you. I'm glad to see someone else do a better job here, because I kind of just, when it comes to energy, that's you know, you get it as close as you can get, but not a big deal if it looks a little weird. Overall, it'll look nice once we actually get it in Engine. So next up, what we're going to do is you could texture pack here, but for now, just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and merge these two. So now we all have it all in one layer. And when we get into the engine, we're just going to use it on a grayscale. So let me go ahead and export this. You can save it to whatever you want. I'm going to save it here in my downloads just because it's empty right now to Magic Beam. And I'm going to go ahead and press save. Cool. And then let me make sure I have it here. Yeah, perfect. All right, we have Magic Beam. All right, now before we close down Photoshop, just one more thing we got to do. We're going to go ahead and press File, New. We're going to do another 2048, and we're going to create a new one that's going to open up a new untitled one. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Filter, Render, and then we want Clouds. So we just want a Perlin noise here, nothing too special. And let's just make sure, yeah, it's a seamless texture. Cool. So yeah, that's a fun little way that you can use Photoshop to get a noise texture really fast. Just do Filter and then go to Render and Clouds. You can do some cooler stuff too, like the fibers is a fun little effect to do as well. But let's go ahead and export this. We'll need it for our effect. Downloads. We'll go ahead and call this T for texture underscore Perlin noise. Cool. Save. Awesome. All right, so now you can go ahead and close Photoshop, and we're going to go ahead and open up the Unreal Engine. If you want to just create a blank project, I already have one open here, just ready to go. But if you want to create a blank, just a blank project here, it'll start out. You'll get these little chairs, and you'll get the brown copper here. All I did was increase the size of the copper so you could see a actual playground of what we're going to be doing. So to get started, let's create a folder. We're going to call it Magic Trails. All right. Then we're going to open that up, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our two textures that we have. We're going to drag them in here. Perfect. You'll see Magic Beam and Perlin Noise, the two we need. Next, what we're going to need is a material. We're going to call it M for material underscore Magic Trails. And then we're going to do a particle system. We're going to call it P for particle system underscore Magic Trails. Capital T here. Got to stay consistent here. Cool. All right, go ahead and open up your material. Pull this over here. There we are. And then you can attach it up here to the top if you'd like. I like to keep mine separated because I like to be able to move it around a little bit more. If you have a dual monitor setup, which is ideal here, you can put that on your other screen. So, okay, for starters, we have our material. What we're going to do is we're going to set this up to be a transparent material because the trail itself is going to be semi-transparent. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the material output node here. We go down to blend mode and we're going to switch it to translucent. Default lit is fine. You can make it unlit if you want. I like them lit. And then I'm going to do two-sided. And I'm going to go ahead and press apply. So now we'll have a fully black, transparent material ready to go. And what you just need is the opacity and the emissive color. So let's go ahead. For starters, we're going to worry about the color. So what we want to do is have this trail start at a certain color, and then as it goes over its lifetime, end at a certain color. When it comes to colors and visual effects, you want to be able to have a sort of a range of color rather than keep it all monochromatic. So let's go ahead and get that started. What we're going to need is a color node. If you hold down 3 and click, you'll get a vector 3 on the screen. You want 2 of those for the colors. Then you're going to need to right click them, press convert to parameter. We're going to call this first one color 1, no space. Second one, same thing, convert to parameter, color 2. Cool. Let's see. I'm gonna do some fun. Let's do the opening color. Let's go with red, and then we'll go to black. Give it a nice University of Utah spin. Then next, you're going to need a linear interpolate node, or a lerp as it's called. And what we're going to take is color 1 into the A, color 2 into the B. And then we're going to drag into the alpha. What we want to do is have it sort of fade from left to right. Left is always going to be the start of the trail. The right side is going to be the end of the trail. So to get that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a texture coordinate. And then we're going to do a component mask on it. And we want just the U space, which if we go ahead and preview that in 2D, you're going to notice it's going to go from black to white, exactly what we want to do here. So A is equal to 0 and B is equal to 1. So black is 0, white is 1. Black to white, we're going to get a cool black to white gradient here, or a red to black gradient here. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. We're going to stop previewing that, and we're going to go ahead and put that into the emissive color for now. Another fun thing to do is if you add in another multiply here, you can go ahead and multiply it all by a particle color. So if you want to edit this color at any time live in the particle system, you can do it that way too. And we'll toss that into emissive color. Ultimately, we're going to multiply it with something else. So I'm going to just set us up for glory here and put that into emissive color. Cool. We're going to take this and we're going to push it up here and press C, and we're going to go ahead and type this is the color. All right. Let's see. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to do a erosion of the trail itself. So as the trail starts, it's going to be strong and powerful, and as it comes to the end of its life, it's going to start eroding and fading away. So let's get started on that. What we're going to need is a texture coordinate. And then we're going to component mask it because we're going to do this erosion based off the same thing we did with the color. We're going to set it to just the U space or mask it into the R. Next up, we're going to go down here. We're going to 1 minus it. 1 minus is going to invert the actual texture itself. So instead of it being black to white, it will be white to black now. Then we're going to toss that into it's called a constant bias node, or a constant bias scale. And I know these values, I already tested them out, but it's going to be negative 0.55 and 2 into those values. And we're going to put that into an add node. Then we're going to shift that into the bottom one here just for the sake of keeping it look nice. And if you ever see your nodes kind of misalign, press Q and it'll line them up all straight for you. It looks a lot nicer. So next we're going to need that Perlin noise we created earlier. We're going to drag that in. And we're going to need a panner node. For the panner, we're going to do -1 in the X and then 0.3 in the Y. And then here, plug it into the add. Perfect. So let's go ahead and start previewing that. There we go. We got a nice little erosion going on here already. But while it looks cool, I want to add just a few little things to it. We're going to pull this off, add it to a multiply. And I also want to put this into a clamp node. So the reason I'm using the clamp, I want to go ahead and make these values a little bit different. I want it to be at its lowest at 0.25 and at its highest at 0.75. Cool. Because we are going to take this and add it, or to take this and subtract it from the original mask that we had. So I'm going to take a subtraction node, put this in the B, and put this into A. Cool. Take a look, start previewing. We'll get a nice erosion here. I want it to be, let's do just 0.8 instead. That'll make it just a little bit longer surviving. And then lastly, I don't want to mess with the opacity too much, so what we're going to do is just put a clamp to be safe in case we go into negatives. I want to make sure that it comes out to always be a whole number, or a normalized number. Oop, not delete. I meant to press Q. There we go. Looks nice. All right, cool. So we got a nice erosion going on that we can see. So next up, we're going to add in the trail itself and start doing some distortion on it. Must be compiling after, yeah, there we go. So now we got some nice erosion happening here. We're going to take this later and multiply it by a distorted version of the trail. So we'll have a distorted trail running through this and eroding at the same time. So let's go ahead and stop previewing this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our purlin noise yet again. Actually, let's go ahead, take this, comment it, and we'll call this erosion, just for the sake of if anyone comes in and looks at our material, they know what's going on. All right, so down here we're going to have our purlin noise. We're going to take a panner node, plug it into the UVs here. We're going to do the same setup, but we're just going to do it in the Y rather, or in the X rather than the Y on this one. You can add it to the Y. It's just going to be feel, you know, whatever looks nice in your opinion. Then we're going to take this. We're going to mask, or we're going to do a component mask of it. We just want the RNG. It doesn't do a whole lot, but what matters is the next value we push in is a vector 2, which the constant bias only takes vector 2s, so that's why we are doing this here. And once again, we're going to do -0.5 this time and 2. We're going to toss this into a multiply. Cool. Next up, we'll need to make a scalar parameter. If you hold S and then click, you'll get your scalar parameter. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it flow strength. So this is going to determine how much distortion is going to go into the trail texture that we made. I'm going to take this, I'm going to toss it into a multiply. I'm also going to multiply it with a texture coordinate. We want just the UV space, so we're going to do a component mask just in the R with a red Q to make it look nice. Build this into a multiply and then this into a multiply. So cool, we're taking this vector 2 and we're multiplying it by this vector 2 down here. Or I guess just the U area. And then we're going to take a add. I want this to be in the bottom part. Not that it really matters in terms of math, but then I'm going to go ahead and do texture coordinate. Toss it in here. No mask on this one, just straight up UV space. And we're going to add this now to, we're going to use a panner for our next texture, but then we're going to bring in our magic beam. The texture that you made in Photoshop, you're going to go ahead and plug it into the UVs here. Panner, let's go ahead and give it a -1 in the X. And then let's take a look at what it looks like. Start previewing node. So we just have our standard trail right now. And the reasons for that is because we didn't put anything into our flow strength. So if we go ahead and up our flow strength, you'll start to see a little bit of distortion there at the end. You can add as much distortion as you like. The more distortion you get, though, the crazier the texture becomes. If you go too high, you'll start to get the tiling of the texture up top here, which you shouldn't see too much of because of the erosion that we have, we're going to be multiplying it, but I like to keep it around 0.4, I think. 0.4 is a nice spot. If you want to up it, you can. Feel free to mess with that. And then next, now that we have, let's go ahead and make this comment energy beam. Oh, spelled energy wrong. Energy beam, cool. So now we have the beam itself. Let's go ahead and increase the size there. So now let's bring them home. So we take the erosion, we're going to multiply it by the actual energy beam and start previewing. Cool, we got a nice little trail here with some distortion coming off the end. And I'll show you some tricks to get it to be a little bit longer, to have less distortion, or whatever you see fit. But notice how we have that little bit of wave that we had on the texture that we originally made. That makes for a really nice look. Lastly, we're going to add a mask so we don't have such a hard edge here, kind of make it a little bit softer. So let's go ahead and create that mask. This one's a little bit more complicated, but when you think about it, it's really not too much. It's just a bunch of different values multiplying together. So we're going to take the texture coordinate. We only need one node of these. And we're going to need a mask for the U space. And I'm going to just copy and paste it and then do a mask of the V space, plug it in. Then I'm going to take both of them and bring them down here again, plug this in. But for these ones, I want the 1 minus version of them, so I want the opposite or the inverse amount for them. So 1 minus, 1 minus. Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply them all together. It's going to make us a nice little box. So multiply there, times this one, times this one, and then ultimately you should have a nice little square box here. Ooh. Well, I guess it's more of a soft rectangle, but yeah, it's a nice way to make the trails not really hit any of the edges, so you don't get any hard edges when you're playing with the particle system. I like to add one more multiply to it and just kind of buff it up a bit. Let's do like 500. Let's go ahead and preview it. So it's super bright here. So you just get those corners. Let's bring it down actually a little bit. Do 100. Yeah, you got the soft little corners here, but none of that hard edge that any of the trail could reach. And then we'll take this, we'll stop previewing it. And this is where you get kind of tricky with the cues. Go ahead and line up each one of these to look nice. Cool. And then we'll go ahead and take all this, comment, we'll call it the mask. And then we're going to take another multiply here, plug it in here, and we're going to multiply it by mask. Cool. So now that we have the mask in there, let's start previewing. So now any bits that go to the edge of the screen will be just erased and you won't see any of those hard edges, no matter how hard out you push the trail. Let's go ahead and start previewing. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to go ahead and put another multiply. And this one is just for having controls to mess with it. We're going to call it opacity mult. Let's go ahead and just set it equal to 1. Sometimes in Unreal, the transparency is just a little weak. I like to put the multiplier in here so you can get some more darker colors and have it not be quite as transparent, a little bit more opaque. And then plug it into opacity here. So now we should see our trail with the colors. Ooh, so now we got the red going, looking nice, but I kind of want to have a little bit more black in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to do a power node. I'm going to plug this into alpha. Start previewing here. Let's see, is it smaller value or higher? Yeah, we want less red. So let's do 0.5 here. Perfect. Start previewing. Okay, I'm liking this. Let's see how it looks. Is it still too much? Yes, because it's emissive. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing emissive, we're going to go into base color. Sorry, so black isn't emissive, so it won't show up. There we go. So now we have some red to black. Let me go ahead and toss this in here too. Maybe we'll get a little bit more interesting of a look here. Not quite. Let's get a little crazy point to it. It might actually look better. Let's go ahead and flip these colors. Nah, still it's that emissive color. If we get rid of it, it probably looks cool again. Maybe red wasn't the way to go. Let's push it to white. There we go. It's a little bit more interesting. Got some nice whites to red. I'm going to actually do an inverse, so it's kind of like fire, back to the way it was. Oh yeah, that's way cool. So we go from that nice deep red to the white here. And then we'll go ahead and add one more scalar parameter, holding S, clicking to get it. We'll call it emissive molt. So if we want to add more emissives added to it, we can just go ahead and edit that value, set it to 1. And then we should have ourselves a nice looking trail. Yeah, it looks nice. Okay, just a couple more controls I want to throw in. Let's do another scalar parameter. We can call it Erosion Length. We're going to toss it here into this multiply. Set it default to 0.8. And then we'll do one more and we'll call it mask strength. Set it equal to 100. Toss it in here. Cool, we're going to go ahead and save that, and we should have ourselves a material. Then now all we have left is the particle system. Oh yeah, that looks nice. So what we're going to do is just close this after we save it. Then what you're going to want to do is we're going to make a material instance, so that way we can have those values exposed, so we can mess with them live. So if we open up the material instance, you'll see we have the trail itself spinning around here, and then we can live change any of the parameters here. So if we want it more opaque or more transparent, a little bit more detail in it, we can adjust all that here. If we want it more emissive, we can add it here. If we want different colors, let's say we want to go with green instead, we can choose green, blue, yellow, whatever we want. I'm going to cancel, we'll keep it back at red. And then the erosion length, you can see it goes either longer here or it comes up shorter. Let's go ahead and keep it around here. Yeah, I like the 0.6. That looks nice. And then, yeah, we have the flow strength too. So if you don't want it quite as noisy flow-wise, you can mess with it here. Just add just a little bit, 0.3. Yeah, that looks nice. And then bring back the opacity. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and toss this on a particle system. We'll save. You can adjust this to any way you see fit if you want some different looks to your trail or a little bit of adjustments. Those are some nice controls to have for it. I'll go ahead and save, and then I'm going to open up the Magical Trails particle system. Bring it over here. Cool. So for this one, we don't really need to be in the scene as much anymore since we won't be pulling in any textures. So it's going to start you out with your default particle emitter. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a second particle emitter. One of these is going to be our source, and the other one's going to be our trails. So we're going to rename this one to source. Then this one we're going to rename to trails. So for our source, let's go ahead and have our initial velocity be no other directions besides up. Give it a little bit of speed here. Give it a min max of 500 to 50. And then let's give it a location of a cylinder. Cool, so we'll get them spawning out in a circle around here. Let me increase the size or the radius of that cylinder. So they're going to spawn in a flat circle on the ground. If you want to take a look at what it looks kind of like this. I'm actually going to make the height 0. So it's just a flat circle on the ground. Cool, so all of our trails are going to come up out of a tube. And then so the source, you can make whatever you want. We could turn them into a sort of a spark or a orb. For right now, I'm just going to get rid of them and just worry about the trails. I'm just going to take the initial size of them and set it to 0. So they're still spawning, as you can see, but they are invisible because they are so small. And then next up, what we're going to want to do is we're going to make this a trail system. So we're going to go to right click out there and press type data, new ribbon data. It's going to set this to a ribbon system. You can see it starts to make this sort of distortion effect on the texture. Then what we're going to do is, I'm actually going to pull this off real quick. Guess I jumped the gun on that. Well, I guess I could just look it up, but anyways, I'm going to take the material instance of the Magic Trails. I'm going to drop it on here. It's going to take a second to compile. Cool, so now you can see our trails are spawning. They don't look great right now, but that's okay. What we're going to do next is we're going to go to trail source. And what we're going to do is set it to particle and type in the name of our source emitter, which is called source. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to spawn and we're going to set it to 0. So we're not going to have any spawn there. But what we want to do now is go to spawn in here and go to spawn per unit. Drag it up here to the top. We're going to go ahead and set this to 1. Ooh, there we go. We got something. Okay, we got some trails firing up. Let's go ahead and set this to 5. All right, a little bit more interesting. But we're only getting really one trail at a time. So let's go ahead and go to the ribbon data. Let's set our max trail count to 50. Oh yeah, now we're starting to see our trails going. They're still kind of looking weird because we still have initial velocity. So each one of our particles that are spawning on the trail have some weird velocity. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off. Let's actually delete that. Oh yeah, now we don't have quite as much weirdness going on with it. Still doesn't look incredible, but let's go ahead onto our source. We're going to add an acceleration. We're just going to do a uniform one and we'll send it off in various directions to 1,000 in each. And then negative 1,000 in the min. So now we'll get some weird directions it goes. Oh yeah, that's cool. Get them looking a little bit more interesting, just little trails flying up and around. Cool. And then let's make the lifetime a little bit shorter, a little shorter trails here. There we go, that's nice. And then let's maybe buff this up to 20. We can get them spawning a little bit faster. Yeah, that looks nicer. So cool, we got some unique trails going on, so let's go ahead and pull them into the scene. Let's take magic trails. We're going to toss it out here. And there you have it. We got our trails flying around here. We're actually spawning too many here for what we have set. So let's set this to 5. Only get a few spawning at once. Set the lifetime to 2 here. And then what we want is to set this, let's say 1,000. Beautiful. So cool, you'll see the trails firing out of the ground here. Right now there's sort of red trails coming up, but let's imagine like we have a necromancer going in here. Let's go ahead and change those trails. Let's make them a little bit darker here. You get that black sort of look here, and then let's do like a deep purple. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then we can come back in. Now we have some sort of like black souls coming out of the ground. And you can do all sorts of stuff with these trails, but I really like how they look in the end. We'll just go ahead and preview it one last time. This is just a plane, just to showcase them real quick so you can see them. And there we have it. We have our own magical trails that we can edit in any which way we see fit to serve whatever we need here. But yeah, that concludes the tutorial for now. If you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me, feel free to on my YouTube channel. But yeah, this is Travis and Technical Art 4. Have a good night, guys.